Honorable Santia Bradshaw, Minister of Education, here in the Ministry of Education, Technological and Vocational Training. Senator Dr. Romel Springer, Parliamentary Secretary, Ministry of Education. Mrs. Betty Aline Headley, Permanent Secretary, and other officers of the Ministry of Education. Dr. Alois, UNICEF Rep for the Eastern Caribbean, and other officers of UNICEF. Mr. Clinton White, Regional Representative for the USAID, Eastern and Southern Caribbean. Members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is a pleasure to be here this morning for this presentation of devices and other personal protective equipment, PPEs. And we have some honorable persons with us who will be given some information and sharing some details, and therefore my task is very easy, just to introduce the flow. We will have first Dr. Alois from UNICEF, followed by Mr. White, followed by the Minister Bradshaw. So, Dr. Alois, please welcome him.
Yeah, thank you so much. Honorable Minister Santia Bradshaw, Minister of Education. I don't know whether the Permanent Secretary is attending. Mrs. Betty Aline Headley. Let me also recognize my friend, the new USAID Regional Director, Mr. Clinton White. Is there. I would also like to recognize the different officials from the Ministry of Education, members of the media, colleagues from UNICEF. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I was chatting a little bit with the minister, saying that the international community, in particular UNICEF, we really recognize and commend the leadership in Barbados in the way they have been managing the COVID-19 from the outset. When I attend regional meetings with my friends, UNICEF representative across Latin America and the Caribbean, when I present the trend of the curve showing that Caribbean countries have had these curves flattening with reduction of the incidence of new cases of COVID-19. They didn't believe me a couple of weeks ago when I have shown those trends. So we can say that Barbados, the COVID-19 is under control. That's really a great success that needs to be commended, because not far from here, we are seeing, for instance, Latin America, which is now the epicenter of the outbreak, and it's really challenging for the health system to cope with the management of severe and critical cases. That's a great job. And I know, of course, a strong leadership from the Prime Minister, but it's crystal clear, we have seen it, all hands, all Belgians have had their hands on the deck, and congratulations. And, the Ministry of Education, of course, you have responsibility of children and young people. Yes, we have seen that children has been spared to some extent in terms of, I would say, prevalence, the contamination. Unlike older persons, they suffer less those symptomatic COVID-19 reactions, severe reactions. But yet, UNICEF we say that COVID-19 is taking a heavy toll on children. Why? Why? Because most of the time, when I look at the narrative at global level, the focus is on health. But the social impact, and especially on the education sector, is huge. It's the first time in the human history that we have an emergency that impacts directly 1.5 billion children across the world. 1.5. The good news is that over the last weeks, we have seen countries developing plans to reopen schools, which is good. As part of easing the lockdown, the confinement. We have seen countries that have already reopened schools, and we talk about millions of children across the world that have their children back to school already. And I know also that Barbados has plans to reopen schools. I think that is great. You know what? From the outset, UNICEF has been looking at evidence because we saw a movement of closing schools. It was amazing because, you know, there was no strong evidence to support that, the rush to closing schools. Now we know more evidence that children and schools are not the main drivers of the outbreak. There is no evidence on the correlation between the spread of the virus and the fact that schools are closed or not open. There has been, over the last months, weeks, a lot of studies looking into the issue, which is a good news. This encourages countries to reopen school and, of course, ensuring that the school environment is safe, because definitely public settings, public institution cannot be a place where the virus is spread. Anything has to be done to ensure that schools don't have very safe measures for children. So that's why UNICEF, we are excited to be contributing to the implementation of the safety measures in schools. You talked about these infection control supplies. That speaks to that, the masks and so forth. So we are happy that we can contribute to facilitate the implementation, because, you know, safety measures in schools, they have a cost. There is a cost behind. I'm so happy to see the USAID, the regional director, attending, because when the pandemic started in the Caribbean, of course, for UNICEF, that's our role. We have, as soon as possible, to raise resources, to raise funds to support national intervention. And I'm happy to announce that USAID has been the first partner donor to support UNICEF response, not only Barbados, Eastern Caribbean area, but also Southern Caribbean. Mr. Clinton, well, thanks so much for your support to UNICEF and PAHO through the Eastern and Southern Caribbean. So with this ceremony, it's also about for UNICEF, we have used our own resources to support the provision, the procurement of a few tablets. I had a conversation with the minister who was very clear. She told us We need resources. We need more partners to support it. Yeah. We were aware, Honorable Minister, of the need. We were seeing countries and territories across the Eastern Caribbean where underprivileged children were not at all having access to these online platforms. And that's really a serious issue of equity. We knew already that across regions, the education system were facing, the different ministries of education across the world were already, before COVID-19, struggling with what we call an education crisis when it comes to quality education. And then comes COVID-19. You know, thousands of kids that cannot access this online education platform. And of course, UNICEF, we were very concerned, especially for those children from humble background with limited income. So we hope that we keep doing our best to raise resources to support that component, access to online education for underprivileged. I think I have to stop here. Thanks again for having us. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. Honorable Cynthia Bradshaw, Minister of Education, Ms. Betty Ellen Headley, Permanent Secretary, other officers of the Ministry of Education, my dear friend, Dr. Alois, the UNICEF representative for the Eastern Caribbean, and other officers of UNICEF, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. I'm actually very happy to be here today as well for this event. This is actually the first event that I've been able to do non-virtually on Zoom or Google or wherever we've been able to do these. But it also sends a strong message too that we're here together and collaborating and working together as one to do what's necessary to fight back this pandemic. And what the Ministry of Education is doing, what this country is doing, and what your leadership has done, and all of you, and all the citizens, really is remarkable and does send a message on what Barbados can and will continue to do in the future. I wanted to also mention the fact that, you know, as we know, this COVID-19 pandemic has affected every part of the world, and here's no different. But in the face of the COVID-19 pandemic, the United States has mobilized as a nation to combat the virus here, home, and abroad more than $11 billion for international COVID-19 response. So far, $2.2 million has made available through USAID to help the Caribbean countries scale up their risk communication efforts, provide water and sanitation, prevent and control infectious diseases in health facilities, manage your COVID-19 cases, build laboratory capacity, and conduct virus surveillance. This builds on the assistance we provided to the Caribbean for decades, including more than $840 million over the past 20 years, and $236 million of which was for health initiatives. This support comes through a number of different departments, not only USAID, but our Department of Defense, our Center for Disease Control, our State Department, and others. And as Alois had mentioned, we were very pleased to be one of the first responders in supporting UNICEF in this cause, not only for just UNICEF alone, but for all of the countries and Barbados and places that we are supporting. And through UNICEF, we're working with the Ministries of Health, Social Development, and Education across the region for safe operation of children's homes and juvenile centers, the schools. We're also developing action plans for schools and the distribution of critical hygiene and prevention items, as you see here today. Also, one of the things I wanted to mention throughout the Eastern Caribbean, we've worked with UNICEF and others to launch a virtual platform that's providing virtual mental health and psychosocial services to frontline workers and caregivers through an independent and multicultural network of international healthcare professionals. And I think, as Alois had mentioned, this is very critical as well. The mental health and well-being of people, especially during something like this COVID-19 pandemic, really is something that we don't want to see continue to spike up. But how do we control and maintain that for the stability of not only our families and others, but for the children who are being impacted by this? I just want to highlight a couple of things about our relationship also with Barbados before I close. And one of those is the Best dos Santos Public Health Laboratory that handles the bulk of the COVID-19 testing, opened in 2018 thanks to about $6 million in financial support from the United States. Also, we are the primary donor of $1.7 million for the BDF Field Medical Facility that's screening for COVID-19. And our ambassador inaugurated with the health minister in January. Which brings me to my last news, is the fact that I'm very pleased again to be here for this turning over of this vital equipment, supplies, and protection, hygiene, prevention measures that we all are here to see done, but also to support the Ministry of Education, to continue to collaborate with our partner UNICEF, and to see that things begin to prosper and grow as we want to go back to a new normal. But thank you all for this opportunity.
Pleasant good morning to everyone, Parliamentary Secretary, Dr. Ramel Springer, Ms. Betty Aline Headley, PS, Deputy Chief, Joy Adamson, Dr. Alois, who is no stranger to this ministry, and now I am pleased to welcome also Mr. White, who I am sure if you are close to Dr. Alois, we will be seeing lots of you in the near future. Let me just also take the opportunity to welcome you to Barbados, also take the opportunity to welcome you to your new position. And again, we are very grateful for your presence here this morning, and certainly all the work that the agency has been doing for Barbados, not just in education, but also across public health as well. This morning we are here, and it seems as though we've been here quite a bit to speak to the issue of devices and to acknowledge persons who have been so gratefully assisting the Ministry of Education to ensure that our children of Barbados are able to have access to devices. I want to say thank you to both UNICEF, to USAID for their generous donation. Let me start with UNICEF first of all, because when I first became minister, Dr. Alois and I would have met with the team, and we talked about how to get the schools in good working order, not just for this infrastructure, but certainly in the event of an emergency. And UNICEF was able to work with us to allow us to have some water tanks erected across a number of our schools. The thinking was that in the event of a disaster, our schools should be in a position to be back up and functioning as quickly as possible. And again, I just wanted to say thank you for that. It didn't end there, however. On every occasion that we have called on Dr. Alois and his team, they have responded positively, and always, trying to assist us to go beyond the call of duty to help the students of Barbados to meet their full potential. And so COVID-19, while it was affecting everyone across the world, Barbados was no different. And when we reached out to UNICEF and indicated the challenges we were having, before we even got to devices or to PPE, we also sat with them to discuss the protocols that were necessary for the schools, both them and the Pan American Health Organization. And I say that because, the assistance that was given in terms of the guidance, obviously it was allowing us as a ministry to meet the international standards. It was also allowing us to not have to reinvent the wheel, but rather to look at best practices across the world. And be able to tailor-make something for Barbados that would work for our teachers and our students in their own environment. And I think that's really critical, that we were able to consult with our partners and be able to use the documentation that had been provided to be able to look at something that would work. I'm glad today, and I know the chief spoke about it this morning on Good Morning Barbados, that the students have settled in nicely. They've been in school for the last 4 weeks. Thanks to UNICEF, we also had all of the posters and the paraphernalia that you see within the school, indicating how students are to sanitize their hands, how they're to be ensuring that there's physical distancing. All of that has been contributed with the kind donation of UNICEF as well. And we really could not have prepared our schools to be ready had it not been for the assistance provided. Our MRD department would also work closely to ensure that they went out and they were able to place all of the things in the respective schools, and all of the schools came together, principals and teachers, to be able to ensure that the donation given was able to settle students in the environment in preparation for exams. So UNICEF is no stranger. So today's donation and the PPE that has been given in the form of masks, in the form of thermometers, has been really greatly appreciated, and it has been utilized. There is nowhere sitting in any box in the ministry, but everything that has been donated in this COVID environment certainly has been deeply appreciated, and it has been utilized by all of our various partners. USAID, I know Dr. Lois has, I don't want to say dragged you into this, but he has made you what I consider now a partner to the Ministry of Education, and for that we are grateful as well. I know you've spent a lot of time working with Ministry of Health, and as he would have said earlier, our children, we may not see the direct impact on them, but they're indirectly affected by COVID, whether it is that their parents are affected because they take ill, both from a mental perspective, not being able to go back out to work, or even being affected by the virus as well. And so we have had to respond to make sure that our children are able to learn remotely. We had no time to really plan for COVID, but it is really with the kind donations of persons like yourselves and entities like yours that really we're able to meet the targets that we have set for ourselves to make sure that every student is able to learn remotely. And so I really want to extend a warm thank you on behalf of the Ministry of Education, on the government of Barbados's part, all of the ministry officials, certainly the schools and our students, to say thank you to USAID and also to UNICEF for this generous donation. As you can tell, there are lots of kids who are having challenges in the current system, trying to operate in a remote learning environment. We're trying to get as many devices to them as possible. This will go some way to helping to meet that target. We are also looking at all of the socio-economic issues that have come to the fore rather, as a result of emergency response teaching. So whether it is that the inequalities that may have existed before are now glaring everyone in the face, and now we have to respond in a more urgent way, we are all realizing that our children all have the potential to learn, but certainly there are some factors that are affecting them in their ability to be able to do the best to their ability. And as such, these devices and all the assistance that has been given is really appreciated in that context, because we could never have anticipated what this pandemic would flare up. But we are grateful that persons have responded and they see education in a way that allows us to respond positively to meet the various needs. So I just want to say thank you again. I look forward to the continued partnership with both organizations, and we've had long-standing relationships, so I believe that those will continue and certainly continue to be strengthened in the foreseeable future. But again, thank you on behalf of everyone.